notion that this House believes the media should actively report good doings of suspects, for example, past achievements or positive personalities. I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister to open this case with 7 minutes here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe the media have to know how influential their information are to society and how influential their information are to the persons who are thought to be suspected. And so we, at the same time, in the status quo, there is huge imbalance in terms of quality of information that is reported by media. And this is, because of this, the life of the suspected, the entire life of the suspected can be harmed because of the imbalance of the information reported by the media. So we stand on the proposition. As the Prime Minister, I'll show you why the context where we standing on, and I'll show you why this media, the media have using is harm the life of the suspected, and they show you why in our paradigm this can be rectified to more fair situation. So actually, under the status quo, if you are suspected, if you are accused of some other crime and you are become suspected, then your name or the media report, instantly the media report your name and the personality of you and the life history of your life. And once you see the name of suspected on TV or the newspaper, that image will remain in your brain, will remain in your mind, and you can avoid thinking that he or she is not a good person. He or she will be the real offender, even if the court didn't decide, even before the court decide that is really offender or not. So actually, media, because of this information, you have the preconception for the people in very negative way, just because they are sort of suspected. And moreover, ladies and gentlemen, media has tendency to scandalize people's life, especially the private life, or personality. No, thank you. And actually, they are more likely to inform you the negative aspects of your life, such as adultery, or such as the loan, or such as the poverty, or where you are coming from, or those sort of things that is clearly related to your identity. And what is important in here is that the media have very much incentive to show these points very negative way, because because the primary purpose of the media is to sell to increase the circulation of the newspaper, or to get more people to see their TV programs. And actually, they have, in theory, have a strong incentive to show the information in a very negative way, and at the same time, actually they are doing so. And so actually they rarely focus on the positive aspect of the suspected, such as volunteering activities for the community, or those sort of things. Before that, yes.
The problem is the media actively and intentionally portray suspects in a negative way. What do you think if media report in a more or less neutral way and not like actively portray positive points of suspects?
Actually, what we are doing now is to rectify the huge imbalance between in terms of information, and we believe in our paradigm that imbalance with quality of information can be rectified and more fair information will be reported. So yes.
But in the status quo, there are instances where even the suspects are portrayed in a positive light because they're white or because they are, a football athlete that's a star player at university and their rape case is underplayed. What happens when there's a positive bias, and how are we going to counter that?
As I said, that we have to recognize that information reported by the media is totally biased in terms of the profit-seeking process. And actually, I will show you that what happens in our paradigm. And actually, in our paradigm, the media actually inform work as actively inform the positive aspect or positive activity of the people, or the suspected, or the positive are the personalities of the suspected, such as the voice from the friend of the suspected, was also seen. And as I have said, that there's huge imbalance in terms of information, the quality of information, and in a paradigm, the amount of information which is posted, the amount of information that is negative, is be more, will be near will reach to actually the amount of positive information increase, and that will reach to the same or the near level of the amount in terms of amount to the negative information. And so people can avoid to only consider that people can avoid having preconception that the person is bad in nature, and it can stop the people from to think that he or she is suspected totally bad, and this will realize the suspected to recover to be back to the society as they were, or nearly as they were, and free from stigma of the media. So we propose this motion.
I thank the previous speaker for his remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon the media proposition Samuel Casey to the table.
Of course, we do not support the idea that media should portray actively how cruel suspects are and how much inherent nature as suspects are, criminal they have in the media. Of course, we do not support this kind of idea. But we think that we have to say the media should be neutral as much as possible when talking about the criminal justice case, especially talking about suspects. So we think just because media portrays negative way doesn't mean that we have to go to the other edge of the spectrum saying that we have to portray them in a completely positive way. So because we think, even though we respect some sort of idea of respecting citizen voice in the court, we think if that is too much, we think that court system can be malfunctioned. Therefore, we propose this motion. 2 points from opening resolution. Firstly, about media neutrality in case of the justice. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how this media can influence people's decision and jury decision within the harmful for this system. But before that, let me engage with our speaker from opening proposition. So basically, I get from them is that if media report negative way, that's harmful because they focus on historical aspects of the suspects, or they focus on scandals. We think firstly that media has an incentive in the first place to actually not too much focus on the negative part of the suspects, because they have experience of false charge, they have experience of negatively portraying the falsely charged suspects in the past. They have experience of criticism, they have incentive to be modeled in the first place. But secondly, as I explained in my introduction, why does that mean we have to go to the other edge of the spectrum and saying we have to portray them in a completely positive way? But thirdly, we think in terms, as I explain later, in terms of jury's psychological perspective, we think jury have a much more balanced view in the status quo. POI. The first level of media neutrality. Of course, we accept the idea that media sometimes have the power, should have power to control check and balance politics, things like that. We think that's okay because politicians have power to counter this kind of power of the media. They have political foundation, they have the public space to counter against the media's power. However, when we're talking about the jury, which is ordinary people, who have difficulty in countering against the power of the media, we think we should not allow media to influence juries in the first place. Especially when talking about the criminal case, we think this principle is strong. Because we think criminal case is about whether to imprison certain person, whether to actively infringe human rights in the for several years, or actively putting them the criminal record on them. We think that sort of things is so harmful. Therefore, we should not allow media to influence jury in this kind of case, especially when media is not democratically elected, whereas government can have the right to make policy because they are democratically elected. Therefore, media should be neutral. So secondly, practical point. How status quo the situation is balanced. We think that in the first place, as for the media have balanced the view in the status quo as I explained. But more than that, we think even if in reality media is biased, we don't think we have to support the status quo as a position. As a position, we support the idea or situation in which media are more or less neutral in the first place. We do not have any burden of proof to support the idea of actively, negatively portraying suspects in the current status quo. But certainly more importantly, Mr. Speaker, we believe jury has a much more balanced view about whether to imprison or certain suspects or not. Firstly, of course, as they said, they might have some prejudice about suspects because suspects are suspected, and suspects have certain kind of possibility to be criminal according to the prosecutor. Of course, they have this kind of information. However, on the other hand, as a jury, they feel responsibility and the fear as a person to judge certain person in the first place because they feel that they know that when this person is in prison, they're going to be, face harsh experience in the prison and so forth. They see the face of the suspects in the court, and for example, begging for the help to the jury. We think in this situation, jury has also balanced information in the court, even without, even if there is some prejudice about suspects. Therefore, we think there is balance in the status quo. So how this balance can be brought in the aftermath is going to be explained by right now. So firstly, okay, so we think the media is very strong as they said. Media is very only information source for the citizen. Therefore, jury and even judges are likely to be influenced by this kind of media if they portray in a very positive way. Firstly, we think that if media portray these suspects in a very positive way, firstly, the people sympathetic to the suspects are going to mobilize their movement. For example, relatives of the suspects or relatives of those who are relatives or families of the suspects are going to mobilize the power. Or for example, organizations which have antipathy to the prosecutors as a system itself might is going to mobilize themselves. But secondly, they're going to turn this mobilization into action. For example, they're going to surround the courts and for example, appeal for the media, this suspect is not bad, the prosecutor is evil, or things like that. Or they're going to surround the homes for the judges or juries by themselves by mobilizing the supporters. But thirdly, we think if these kind of things happen and, for example, broadcasted in the media, the people are going to be influenced by this kind of mobilization or the sensational one because they feel the gap of the information they've got in the past and they got now. For example, they feel that suspects might be criminal because they're regarded as suspects by the prosecutors. However, they got information about sensational mobilization by anti-prosecutor organization or relatives or families of suspects. They feel there's a gap and they feel that what we have thought is wrong because we are actually controlled by the prosecutors, we are controlled by those who do not like suspects. Therefore, the general public are going to feel that it is not wrong for us to support suspects because they are good in the first place. But fourthly, we think if the general public is mobilized in this way, jury have to be influenced because juries' homes might Jewish homes might be, for example, surrounded by the movement or relatives of the suspects or the organization and sympathetic to the prosecutors or even general public who participated in this movement. And Mr. Speaker, media should be neutral and stay away from any sort of decision about how to deal with the rights of human beings and rights of those who are suspected. Therefore, in order to be neutral, we're very proud to propose this motion. Policy. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the previous speaker for his remarks. Next, I'd like to call on the State Prime Minister to extend their case inside of the chamber.
We say it's a matter of perception of each individual that actually exists in the society, how they regard these suspects. Once they are reported that they are suspects, people on the ground inevitably and automatically regard these suspects as criminal. We say that's a kind of over-punishment, and we say these kind of circumstance or these kind of situation should be avoided and should be rectified based upon the principle of avoiding over-punishment, like double jeopardy law or those kind of things. We say that's totally consistent with these kind of ideology of the liberal democracy's stance. We say that's why we propose. Then, before these kind of substantial, several points of refutation. Leader of opposition firstly told you these media do not have such incentive, malicious incentive to actually disproportionately depict these suspects in a really bad way, precisely because there are some failure in the past, like false church or those kind of things. But we don't think that is something that really can work as a strong incentive for media, precisely because people are really easily forget those past things, and people are really seriously, easily lured to these kind of scandalizing kind of things in the very first place. We don't think media have a kind of really sound incentive to actually keep their neutral stance in the very first place. So this kind of movement actually created the current paradigm that the citizens on the ground will perceive these suspects directly as a criminal. We say, as the media, we say there should be some kind of counter narrative. So this is why they should bear a burden of actively reporting in a good way, such as a thing that they did volunteer work, or they were good in academic ability, or they helped some children, or in the past, things like that. Yes?
If the media is so biased to create negative information about suspects, then how could they possibly design a positive campaign against suspects? I thought they're biased and therefore their information is completely crowded in bias.
Thank you for pointing out. The Prime Minister and I, what we are going to say is that in the past, precisely because, and until now, precisely because they have a kind of incentive which is similar to the profit making, they have this kind of intention to depict in not a neutral way. But in the sense that we have to counter this, we say they can, without these kind of incentive or profit-making incentive, we are going to say that they should bear a responsibility to make a certain kind of counter-narrative. We are not going to say that this is a really pragmatic debate. We say this debate is like the responsibility of the media in the very first place. Okay, so let's move on. No, thanks. So this means that they have a kind of responsibility. And next, the main claim coming from the leader of opposition is because these media's reporting will have a negative effect of deciding a kind of court decision, precisely because some of us are elected to the citizen court trial, all those kind of things. But ladies and gentlemen, we say that's really unlikely to take place. Why is that? Because judges are required to make a decision based upon objective evidence in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, and moreover, no thanks. And he also strengthened his argument by saying that because the public will have a disproportionately good image toward these kind of suspects and rush towards the relatives or families of the judicial courts and will have a strong impact. Well, even if that is true, what happens? It does not have a clear impact on the decision itself. Why is that? Because if they make such kind of decision based on these kind of trivial matters affected by the people on the ground, we say there will be no kind of trust towards these kind of citizen court judge system. We don't think that will continue in the long term, precisely because in the CJS sphere, the fact proves the fact, and the fact is the last resort for them to do so. So what on our side of the house want to prove you is that the perception of the public is really disproportionately harming the criminal. We say it is actually creating a kind of mental depression or those kind of things. We say criminal, so we are talking about the case in the very first place, in the sense that they are not guilty. We say in this case, it is clear that they should not be reported in a really bad way, right? So what is contentious is in a case where the criminal, where in the case the suspects are guilty. So in this context, what will happen? This is our main point, and we want to actually diminish these kind of over punishment by the perception of people on the ground. We say, as the Prime Minister told you, people on the ground in the status quo are actually inevitably associating their process of thought by thinking that if the suspects are reported, he is automatically a criminal. Then what happens? This is really important. They will actually write a kind of something on the internet, like on their blog, or as you can see in the case of Japan, Nichagara, or those things like that. We say even these kind of information, or maybe there's at the house will say that's not important or those kind of things. But it does matter. Why is that? Because these kind of even though these information are trivial, we say these kind of information will exacerbate it because there is a kind of uniqueness of the internet society. People will actively believe that. People will unconsciously believe that. This means there will be a clear barrier for these suspects that receive from the society. The society will show a stance that even if you are not like criminal, even if you are not guilty, society will regard you as a criminal, and in this case, you are not being able to go back to the society. It means the integration of the society is something that is really jeopardized in the very status quo. That's something really against the principle of criminal justice system in the very first place, because they can reflect on the ground. They can have the rehabilitation precisely because they can receive some programs within the program of CJS. But we say precisely because the people's perception toward these criminals or towards these suspects are disproportionate and harmful for their life, we say that's not necessary. And the media should provide more information to counter this. That's why we're extremely proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the previous speaker for his remarks. Next, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to extend their case in 7 minutes here.
No bias. However, if the media try to actively report in some way, then the jury easily to be affected in that way, and jury cannot judge the case without a bias. That is how we believe that brought by this motion. So on this stance, in my speech, I'm going to explain how the media broadcasting are going to give bad effect on the jury inside the court system. But before that, let me give them three debunkers. So firstly, what I heard from them was like, media has no incentive to be neutral because they forget about the past. No, Mr. Speaker, we think that media has a lot of incentive to be neutral. Firstly, because precisely because they are going to be criticized by the public if the media tend to be really in a bad way. Because in the public, there are certain actors who have the incentive to protect about the suspect benefit. For example, like the lawyer group. The lawyer group tend to be have the interest of the suspect side. That is why if the media tends to be really like bad, broadcast the bad way of the suspect, then those acts are going to criticize in our paradigm. That is why we think that in our paradigm, media tend to be neutral as much as possible. Secondly, this is like after taking this proposal, there is no harm because the jury can judge objective view. Ladies and gentlemen, if this characterization of jury is true, then there is no problem under the status quo, right? Even under the status quo, the jury can judge without the influence of the media if their characterization is true. So that is why we think that there is no necessity to take this motion to begin with later, please. Lastly, they told like there are two characters of the suspect, like innocent suspect and guilty suspect. And the first one, innocent, if the suspects are innocent, then they are going to get the mental harm. This is bad. Mr. Speaker, I can't understand why not the innocent suspects are going to get the mental harm in our parliament. Because the suspects are innocent, then media are going to broadcast the fact, right? Media are going to broadcast that the judge decide he is innocent. That is why there is no stigma in our parliament if the suspect is really innocent. Nextly, if the suspect is really guilty, we don't think that. And they say that people are going to write on the blog, people write on the internet board how bad the criminal is. This activity is not media, right? There is no burden of us to protect solve those kind of blog or internet program to begin with. Even in our paradigm, there are some people who still write on the blog. So there are some people who still write on the internet board. So they cannot solve their own problems even with taking this motion. So, moving on to my argument, I'm going to explain how media's effective, good actively report to give the bad effect on jury inside the court. But before that, if you have any information. Okay. So, under the status quo, we think that because the media tends to be neutral, as I already explained, we think that jury can judge with a clear mind. Why is that? As my partner explained, jury has a responsibility that they have to judge without bias, and secondly, because the jury are from the various background, that they can think about, there are a lot of jury who are similar with the victim case and who are similar with the suspect's case. In this diverse case of jury, they can judge with a clear mind. And moreover, because the judge told you that you should judge from the evidence which only shown by the court, then in that case, jury has the incentive to judge by the evidence which only shown inside the court. And moreover, because there is a close discussion between the lawyer and the prosecutor, then we can minimize the bias happening inside our party. So that is why the judge can judge without the bias, in both cases, positive or negative, right? So however, after taking this proposal, what's going to happen? We think that because the media are going to actively broadcast, we think that jury are going to be like biased in this case. Why is that? Because we accept that in some media, for some cases, some media can be a really biased case. For example, because of the sponsor have the biased view, or the CEO of the media company has a biased view, then those cases, media have to follow those idea of the biased view, right? And secondly, because the media has limited information compared with the prosecutor, I'll take later, compare with the prosecutor. Prosecutor can access to the information as much as possible. However, this is not the case of media, right? Media can have less information. That is why we cannot know the information that media has is really true or not, right? However, because of the media tends to broadcast it as if it is really a true information, then some people are going to believe those media's information, even though the media's information is not true in some cases. Yes.
The most important influence by media is on public, as we say, because as you say, the influence in the court will be not so much. So please engage our very stance.
I didn't say that the influence in court is small. Rather say we think that the judge is only inside the court is really important thing because the jury can be really affected easily by the media. Why is that? Because we think the jury has less experience compared with the professional judges. Doesn't mean that the jury can be easily to be affected, easily to be influenced. And moreover, we think the media is a close actor for the jury, because jury wants the television, jury wants the newspaper every day. That is why if the media tries to be like broadcast about good aspect of the subject, then the jury tends to believe those kind of things, because that is the thing they watch what they read every day. In this case, we think that even inside the court, under their paradigm, the prosecutor and lawyer do the cross discussion, then we think that the jury has the tendency to prioritize the suspect side more than the prosecutor side, because the suspect side is something that they are told by the media that you should take the suspect side also, right? But that is why, because the prosecutor cannot show how bad personality of the suspect is, then we think that there is the balance of information portrayed great. We think that in this case, jury only tend to prioritize about the suspect side. We think that in this case, juries are going to be really biased. That is why we're based on proposing.
Thank you, previous speaker, for her remarks. Next, I'd like to call on the university government to extend the government's case in 7 minutes.
So we actually see what happened in the opening government is that the opening government's main question is that, okay, whether the society actually does have these kind of strong bias, or are they going to be really biased even though they have these kind of active information about the good doings, right? The whole